When you hold me in your arms so tight, you let me know everything's alright. I'm hooked on a feeling, I'm high on believing that you're in love.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Source Material Comics Podcast, coming at you with episode 234, I'm pretty sure. This evening, we are going to be discussing a book that came out from Marvel Comics 2015, Patsy Walker AKA Hellcat, Hooked on a Feline.
I am hooked on a feline. I'm believing that you're in love with me.
Mark Radulich, welcome to the show here, the patriarch of the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. We're going to be talking Patsy Walker Hellcat tonight. Are you ready, sir?
I'm ready to do the Stray Cat strut.
Oh, okay, all right.
How many more cat references to songs can I work into this podcast? We'll find out.
The night is young. And joining us on this journey, his name is Evan Bevins. A week outside of his appearance at the River City Comics Arts Festival. Evan Bevins, welcome back to the show here. Are you ready to talk some Patsy Walker Hellcat?
I am always ready to talk about a member of the Defenders.
Real quick, this book, I want to give a shout out to the creative team. Our writer is a lady by the name of Kate Leth, I believe is how I'm going to go with it. Her last name there. Art is by Brittany L. Williams with a little bit of a guest showing by Natasha Allegri for the final issue that we're going to talk about tonight. This is the first 6 issues of that series. The colorist Megan Wilson. So there's our creative team. Mark Radulich, do we have any particular reason why we have decided to do this book tonight?
Initially, I wanted to do it around the same time as Jessica Jones, but between when they ran the show and the way our schedule worked out, there just wasn't room to get them back to butt to butt.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's like a human centipede of shows.
That's right. Face ass.
Oh no.
You know, I threw it on the schedule because the third season of Jessica Jones was going to feature Hellcat, the Patsy Walker sort of ascension to being a superhero. And after having seen the third season of Jessica Jones, they tried.
They really captured the whimsy of Hellcat.
They really didn't. It was a very different Patsy Walker. However, I still wanted to do the book. It got some interesting reviews and ratings, and we need some light fare on the Source Material podcast. All that serious stuff we discussed last week with the DC Hanna-Barbera 3.
Oh, yeah, that was serious stuff.
Yeah, there was a lot of angst on that show. might have just been Robert Winfrey. I'm not really sure.
Oh, sure. Yeah, his anxiety had skyrocketed when I messaged him. It's like, oh, jeez.
So, it's fun to do fun.
Yeah, I agree. And you went, again, above and beyond the call of duty for the Source Material podcast. We're only covering the first 6 issues, but you finished the whole thing out, right?
I have nothing else to do.
Well,
I'm on doctor-imposed house arrest until September 4th.
Okay.
And I go back to work September 5th. So, yeah, you're going to be getting a lot of this out of me.
I don't mind it. Well, we're going to touch on what happens after this 6 issues for sure. I want you to kind of clue us in, because I know there are some threads that they kind of weave through this first story to kind of set us up for the longer arcs that we're going to be running into. So I'll have questions there. Evan, did you read all of this series? I know you jumped on this particular podcast because you're a fan of what's in here. So I assume you read the first 6 and were like, yeah, I want to talk about it.
It turned out I didn't quite finish it, I think, because I didn't get all the way to the end. Longtime Hellcat fan because of her Defenders connection. Yeah, was excited to see what they would do with her on Jessica Jones. I did not go above and beyond and read the rest of the series, but I went back and found my Patsy Walker Hellcat graphic novel from 2009 that I'd never gotten around to reading, where she is assigned as the Initiative's sole representative in Alaska.
Oh, jeez. Is it light fare like this, or is it?
It is. It's not quite as light as this. It's not quite as full on comedy, but it's very offbeat. She stumbles upon some mystic polar bears that seem to be up to no good, and then is tasked by some sorceresses with getting back their daughter, who was kidnapped by the Wendigo, A.K.A. ran away with her suspenders wearing Sasquatch boyfriend to rebel. So yeah, it was a lot of fun too.
Any idea who was writing that?
Catherine Immonen.
Okay.
It also had a short thing they did from a brief revival of Marvel Comics Presents. Patsy goes on a blind date and winds up fighting multiple aspects of her own personality.
Ooh, interesting.
So, and it had a lot. The art was more traditional, but it had a lot of the character elements from this hooked on a feline.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about Patsy, because this is a character that, aside from what I watched in Jessica Jones, I had never I don't recall reading anything with her in it. I definitely didn't read any of the solo stories that was put out there. So, Evan, I guess I'll lean on you here real quick. Can you give us an idea of Patsy Walker's powers, maybe a little bit about her history?
Well, her history, she's actually a very old Marvel character. Her first appearance, I knew these official handbooks of the Marvel Universe I bought years ago would come in handy, was Miss America Volume 1, Number 2 in 1944.
Wow.
But
that's going back, I think if I remember right, they said Captain America debuted in 41.
41.
Yeah, so this character has a lot of life behind it. My gosh.
But you would not know that by the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
No, you would not.
Well, and of course, back then she was not Hellcat. She was Patsy Walker. It was, I don't know if it was more of a romance comic or what, because superheroes around then in World War II they were big, but then they kind of went under for a while. And they brought her back roughly, Patsy Walker attended the wedding of Mr. Fantastic and I guess at that point the Invisible Girl. Her ex-husband, Buzz Baxter, one of the characters from the original series, was working at the Brand Corporation, which is where Hank McCoy, a.k.a. the Beast, was working when he decided to get rid of his mutant powers and accidentally made himself furry.
Yep.
And so she got to know Hank that way, and while he was an Avenger, she got roped into an adventure with him and took a costume used by the Cat, a.k.a. Greer Nelson, a.k.a. Tigra, and was like, hey, I'm going to be a superhero.
Yeah, her Hellcat, her first appearance, Avengers number 144, February of 1976. And I thought it was very interesting she picked up that costume. I had no idea about that from, what is now known as Tigra. So that's some pretty cool stuff. Now, what are her abilities? I mean, one of the things they show in this series is she can, she has some kind of innate sense about magic being used or something.
Her abilities are being adorable.
Well, there's that. I mean, so that's one reason I relate to the character. But you guys are just shaking your head silently, aren't you? But yeah, she can detect magic. According to the old 2005 handbook, Women of Marvel edition, she has a quote-unquote hellborn resistance to injury, especially magical assaults, and can alter her attire at will. She is, now, after she put on the costume and started hanging out with the Avengers, she did receive martial arts training on Titan, a.k.a. Thanos' home planet. I think she worked out with Moondragon, if memory serves, so she did get some training. I mean, she was, kind of a supermodel. She got some superhero training, too. So other than that, she's just a really good athlete. She has, retractable cable claws on her boots and gloves. In that series where she was out in Alaska, she saved a guy falling by firing her cable claws. One wrapped around his neck and one punctured his shoulder. But he didn't die, so
he didn't die.
and he was kind of immortal anyway. So, and then she married the son of the devil, or a devil.
Yeah, that was one of the darker spots that they were talking about in that video. I watched it earlier today, where they were kind of breaking down her history. When they hit the 90s, she was married to Damien Hellstrom, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I didn't read any of those. The next time I saw her was when she had come back and was hanging out with the Avengers again.
Okay.
But,
yeah, she apparently had committed suicide.
She was talked into suicide by an entity called Death Urge.
Okay.
Who, 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, had connections to Mr. Immortal from the Great Lakes Avengers and was replaced by the Great Lakes Avengers member Doorman in Dan Slott's GLA limited series, which also featured a certain character joining the team by the name of Squirrel Girl.
Ah, there it is. There it is. That's reference number 1.
There you go.
She mentions in here about how she, had a stint in hell at one point, come back, was resurrected in some way. You said you read the previous series where she was in Alaska. Now, her situation here, I don't know if there was. Do you know of anything in between?
Not necessarily. They did a cool Defenders revival, but I think that actually came before that. Kurt Busiek wrote it, Eric Larson drew it, and they proudly trumpeted a magazine referring to it as the worst comic currently being published on the cover.
Yeah.
That was a terrible review. It was a great, fun series.
Yeah.
I do not know for sure what she had been up to between these two. Maybe Marvel asked for some pitches, given that she was coming up on Jessica Jones. This series came out.
Yeah, this was 2015, so...
Yeah, which is when Jessica Jones, I think, premiered, or close to it. This
was the 3rd season, so I think Jessica Jones is either late 2015 or 2016, so yeah.
As you see in Hooked on a Feline, she doesn't have any connection to Jessica Jones in the comics. The role of Jessica's superhero best friend, I think, was played by Carol Danvers, A.K.A. Captain Marvel.
Yeah, we've actually read an issue or two where, it was. I think it was our first volume of Jessica Jones where those two were. You could tell they had a history.
Yeah, and obviously Marvel was not going to put Captain Marvel on Netflix. They had a little bit bigger plans for her. Yeah. So they kind of shifted some of the relationships around. And I guess from the references in here, she did show up in some She-Hulk issues. The She-Hulk of Dan Slott and Charles Soule are on my perpetual list of comics I need to get around to reading at some point.
Mark, did you read anything with Patsy Walker Hellcat in it prior to this?
No. My first exposure to Hellcat was when Patsy Walker was a character in the first season of Jessica Jones.
The only other part of Hellcat's history I wanted to mention that there was a big part that's touched on in here is she was one of the longtime members of the Defenders. The team that wasn't really a team. It started out with Doctor Strange, Namor, and the Hulk, and then they threw in Silver Surfer, which at that time was like, who are the 4 Marvel guys least likely to be on a team? And they collected some other, 2nd or 3rd tier heroes like Valkyrie, who we see in this series, Nighthawk, and Hellcat. Some of the members came and went, but those 3 were kind of the core, along with Doctor Strange and the Hulk. That's what made the Defenders jump out to me. I found an issue at a flea market years ago, and I'm like, wait, the Hulk's on a team? I know he was with the Avengers for an issue and a half, but... Mm-hmm. And so she kind of stuck around through not all of them, but a lot of the iterations of the Defenders.
The Defenders were less judgmental than the Avengers.
Oh, yeah. The Defenders didn't even want to be a team. There was a famous storyline where this film school student that hung around with them shot a documentary about them without telling them and said, hey, basically to be a Defender, all you have to do is say you are. So there was a storyline called Defenders for a Day where all these superheroes claimed they were Defenders, and then a bunch of villains were like, hey, we're the Defenders, and then they went off and robbed some places because apparently you can do that if you're a Defender. So yeah, the Defenders was just loads of weird, offbeat, fun. Steve Gerber, that created Howard the Duck, wrote it for a while. And so Hellcat's just always been, in this series, and then the one I went back and read, just kind of, underscored that she's this really fun character that has been through these horrible, dark things. And, on the one, she's, an ex-model and superhero and all this stuff, but she also has kind of a Murphy's Law sort of luck that makes her kind of relatable.
All right, well, here we go. Let's talk about Hooked on a Feline. So here is when Patsy Walker, a.K.A. Hellcat, loses her job working for her lawyer friend, Jennifer Walters, a.K.A. She-Hulk, she soon finds out that this is only the beginning of her problems. Now she has to find a place to work and a place to live, and adding to her plight, the funny books based on her teenage years that were published by her now deceased mother, right? They said her mom was deceased, correct?
Yeah, and had nothing to do with Fool Killer.
Okay.
Spoiler alert.
Now her now deceased mother are going back to print thanks to an acquaintance named Hetty Wolf. I say acquaintance in quotes there. But a chance run-in with a just-turned criminal, Ian Sue, going under the ominous name of Telekinean, actually helps put both of their lives on the right track, or so it seems. In the first 6 issues, Patsy has to overcome many hurdles, including battling with the corrupt landlord's cute son, who just so happens to have control over bedbugs, and an evil Asgardian by the name of Casiolena, who is attempting to put together a crew of magic-based criminals to do some dirty deeds. And don't forget a small epilogue story that deals with the villainous Arcade with guest artist Natasha Allegri. There you go. There is my quick nutshell synopsis of the Hooked on a Feline first 6 issues of Patsy Walker Hellcat. So, all right, now Mark, that was, the synopsis of the first 6 issues. Why don't you tell us, because you went, what does it go to another, is it 18 or 17 issues?
17 issues.
Total? Okay. Well, what happens after this?
After this, after this is Civil War 2, whereas we know we covered that during Marvel event May.
And everybody loved it.
Yeah. It was exciting. It made us all happy to be comic book fans. So She-Hulk, as we know, goes into like a coma, which kind of sends Patsy into a bit of a tailspin. This was kind of Jennifer She-Hulk was kind of her rock. She was the person who she could kind of cling to in the storm. And now she's out of commission, and Patsy is sad, and she's having to figure out kind of what to do to move on during all of this. And it's not easy when your friend basically may no longer be with us. So there were some other superhero type appearances. We have Jubilee, who apparently turned into a vampire at some point.
No wonder where that question come from. I was like, why is Mark asking this question? The
characters that kind of hung around for this first arc where they dealt with Casiolena continue to show up and become part of Patsy's circle.
Okay.
There's more stuff having to do with the comic book and Hetty. I want to say it's volume 2, where Damian Hellstrom and Wolf Dog, Mad Dog, Sheepdog, whatever his name is.
Mad Dog, I believe.
Mad Dog.
Oh, yeah, that's her other ex.
They are manipulated into coming after her by Hetty, and that takes a turn. She catches an interdimensional space flu.
Interdimensional?
Yeah. Which causes her to sneeze and warp reality, which is hilarious.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I need to write Kevin Feige and be like, look, when you guys have the rights from Netflix back, and you're able to do shows with Jessica Jones and Patsy Walker and Daredevil, can we please just give Patsy her own show?
Patsy gets a one-shot episode off of Jessica Jones where she catches the interdimensional flu.
And just, it sneezes and warps reality.
The X-Men.
Yes.
Oh, please.
There we go.
If Solved it for you, Marvel.
Yeah. Congratulations, Evan. Normally I'm the one with the terrible ideas that I think they should run with, but I like the idea of how mutants come into the world. That'd be really funny, actually. Patsy gets a flu, sneezes, causes mutants, and then Scarlet Witch just says no more mutants, and she sneezes again, and they just keep doing this back and forth like a Looney Tunes cartoon.
Did we just write Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness?
Oh, there it is.
Hope so. Now I have this picture of Hellcat with a sign that says mutants, and Scarlet Witch stands in front of her, and she's got a sign that says no more mutants. And then
That's
they just
nothing to sneeze at.
no, and they keep carrying the sign down, and then at the end of it, there's just a picture of Galactus.
All right. All right. So she catches the flu, warps reality. What's left?
At some point, she ends up. Well, at some point, she ends up working out a lot of her issues, especially dealing with Jen being in a coma with Bestial, Damien Hellstrom's demon.
Belial. I think Belial's the
Belial. That's really all I can remember, to be honest with you.
You said you had a good time reading the whole thing, right?
I did. It's got that, for better or for worse, kind of catty type artwork, very childish in a lot of it, which I really enjoy. I think I don't enjoy artwork where it looks too surreal, too Picasso, too someone just dipped their dick in paint and smeared it on a page. The Sam Keith approach.
Oh, gosh. Mark it off the bingo card, please.
But when it's drawn like a Sunday Funnies, I dig it. So, I always feel like the cop-out in comics is the hero is rich, the hero works for the government, or a rich person is paying for everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just one issue after another of, hey, there's a threat, the team gets together or the hero gets together and takes care of the mission. I like the idea of these people have to eat and pay rent, and not everybody wants to be an Avenger. And, we're living in a world post-Terrigen Mist, which is kind of an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., ABC Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., kind of idea where people are just kind of waking up with powers and it's changing their life. And a lot of them, again, are not Captain America. They don't want to run into the battlefield. And so they're just trying to figure out what to do with their powers. It's one of the things I did like about Jessica Jones season 3 was what's his face?
Eric?
Yeah, Eric.
Mindwave.
Mindwave. Yep.
Right. So, you have the guy from Jessica Jones season 3. Here's the guy that they don't really tell you how he got his powers. He just does. And again, he's not a bad guy, but he's just trying to pay his rent. And he figures, with my powers, I can, I know who's bad and who I can take advantage of. And so that's what I'll use to buy pizza and beer with. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like, okay, see, after a while, the whole idea of guy or girl gets powers, fights an interdimensional time traveling oyster, and lives in a mansion gets kind of old. And so I'm drawn to the idea of people are people, so why should it be you and I should get along so awfully types? Mm-hmm. And that's what this is. This is like, well, a whole lot of comic booky, crazy out there shit happened to me. And at this point, I just want to live my life. And that's kind of Patsy's mantra through this is, I just kind of want to be small and ordinary and occasionally punch somebody in the face. I don't want to get too crazy. The characters around her, are have had stuff happen to them, and they're all just trying to figure out where they fit into this world. Mm-hmm. And so I like that, because as much as I like the sort of angsty identity crisis type stuff, I also like the weird kind of run-of-the-mill everyday friends approach to comics.
Yeah. Again, this is not going to be an episode where we jump into the societal commentary that's happening in 6 issues.
This is not a Mark Russell jam.
No, it is not.
I can't pitch this to David Simon.
No, you cannot.
I could pitch it to Genji Cohen, though.
Okay. All right, then.
She's the broad responsible for Weeds, Orange is the New Black, and Glow.
Okay.
Can we get a Genji Cohen Hellcat series? That'd be awesome.
You won't hear any
2 years.
Yeah, I was going to say, we got to wait a couple
That's the agreement with Netflix.
Yeah.
All right. Kevin Feige, Evan Bevins and I just gave you your Hellcat series. Work on it.
There you go. So, Evan, let's talk about the first 6 issues here. I mean, there's a couple really the main players that we get out of this. We have a big time villain, which is Casiolena, and we have our kind of sidekick person that's helping Patsy out, which is Telekinean. But do you have any comments on the characters here, the villains we run into?
Casiolena, who I apparently have read several comics featuring, given her appearances in Defenders. Even Popo the Cunning was back in Defenders number 66.
Oh, really? Was he?
I saw. They kept playing the joke, or kept going back to the joke. She's basically the Enchantress. But somewhere out there's a Casiolena completist who was so excited when this comic came out. I believe it.
Guaranteed.
So this series really reminded me. I told you I'd make a lot of Squirrel Girl references. And they have very little to do with her being in the series, but this one is kind of in the vein of Squirrel Girl. I can't remember where it in terms of tone and art. I can't remember exactly when it came out, but there was kind of this little subgenre of Marvel Comics at that time with Squirrel Girl, Hellcat, and then Howard the Duck. Howard makes a few appearances in here when he was a PI who had an office in the same building as She-Hulk, which is why it was easier for Jen to let Patsy go, because Howard owed her some favors. That you saw them working together over in Howard's books. And then they had a cameo from Tara, Howard's sidekick.
Oh, this is the tattoo artist, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, who's kind of a Skrull, but not, I think. Yeah, but that Howard series was a lot of fun, too.
I read that. I read all the way through that.
I still haven't finished it. I missed a few issues. I do have the next ones up for me to read are the one where Bev comes back and the one where Leah Thompson hires him to find out why she has missing time in the 80s. But so, yeah, I like the lighter stuff that kind of plays on the continuity. You know, it's not hard and fast with it, but it says, hey, this story happened and we're going to pull these elements together and have fun with it. You know, so you get her connections with the Defenders, like calling up Doctor Strange when she's dealing with magic bed bugs, or bringing in Valkyrie and her horse Aragorn, who, you know, is it's not a unicorn, a Pegasus, one of those mythological creatures like a narwhal, I guess.
Yeah, that's what I understand. Narwhals are not real. They are a myth. That's a callback, Mark Radulich.
I've been on the show before.
But yeah. So they play with the continuity and use it to their advantage. You don't have to know all this stuff, but you know it's cool to know that Casiolena, that's a forgotten villain, has a history with Hellcat, instead of just bringing in some random magic person to be the bad guy. Rather than say, oh, it's a magic lady from Asgard, they just lean into it. Oh, she's basically the Enchantress. No, I'm not.
It was made for a sitcom.
Yeah, the art fits really well. The one issue I had, and I think there's probably a term for it, but some of the shots with Hellcat when she's like kind of mushed up and really extra cartoony.
Oh yeah,
kind of took me out of it a little.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean that's not to say the art's bad. It's excellent art. It's not what I'm used to. Of course, I had a little trouble reading another comic that rhymes with Whirl Pearl, that had Erica Henderson, is a more cartoonish style, and it took me a little while to get used to that, but it was absolutely perfect for the tone, and this art works great for the tone of this series.
I want to talk about my favorite part out of this. It definitely wasn't a very weighty read. It was a breezy read, Mark Radulich.
We like you breezy.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, sometimes you read a comic and you get to something that you weren't expecting. The kid that could control the bed bugs just freaked me out and had me itching. I mean,
I love that story.
Oh my gosh. She's going to sleep and she wakes up and you could tell she's got the art shows she's got marks up and down her arms. This is her first night staying at the apartment that Ian has invited her to be a roommate in. And they just met the landlord, who was a jerk. But she also met the son, who was, a handsome fella. But she wakes up and she realizes that she has bed bugs. Runs over to the landlord's, she just moved into this apartment. So this jerk of a landlord, she wakes him up and says, hey, we got bed bugs. He's like, oh, whatever. Well, it turns out this has been a plot all along by the landlord. He gets these people in there and bed bugs them out and then takes their security deposit. That is the big villainous plot here. But the son can control these bed bugs. Now, I don't know if they have to be magic bed bugs or if he's just controlling them by magic. Either way, she can sense that there's something going on, and that leads to her figuring out what it is. But I mean, there are a couple panels where the dude is just covering himself in bed bugs, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I couldn't take it. It was bad. But yeah, so that right there was, if I felt something, out of this book, I laughed a good bit, but boy, I never got more creeped out on reading something as lighthearted as this ever. So I did enjoy that.
I think Patsy shared your, I was looking at that page where he says, to me, my bed bugs, hear my call. And she's going, oh, why are there so many of them?
Ugh. Gosh, man. And it's so funny because she thinks he's so hot. And then, at the end, when the story's all said and done, the guy's kind of repenting for what he's done. He tells his dad off and that everything seems to be right with the world. And
seems like what they were doing really bugged him.
Jesus.
So my favorite part of this, though, the big thing here is that she's recruiting all of these people, and she's tempting them by like fixing their credit scores. And it's like, yeah, she can't do that. It doesn't work that way. I was cracking up at a lot of that.
My student loans.
Yeah.
Well,
there's a whole thing where like She-Hulk is talking to one of them. It might have been Bag Lady, and she's like, "Yeah, and so these are the things you have to do to repay your credit." Like she can't do that. I was laughing my ass off at that stuff,
which is another Squirrel Girl-esque moment because the thing that Squirrel Girl repeatedly does is she talks to the villains and finds common ground with them. So more often than not, she's talking them down like She-Hulk did with that guy. You know, well, I can help you out. It just takes time and a good budgeting system. And the guy's like, I'm going to go ahead and tell the others to stop blowing stuff up.
Yeah, and we see that with the very first villain she encounters, which is Telekinean, who ends up becoming her friend and her roommate, who just committed a crime. But she finds common ground with them, and she starts talking to him, and then she ends up finding out that this was his first ever crime that he ever committed, and she's like, well, okay, well, if you just return the stuff, maybe we can, you could be right back on the right track. So yeah, Telekinean ends up becoming her friend and her roommate. Mark, do they show, does him and Tom, what's his face, become a thing? The bearded guy? Okay, so they become a thing later on in the series.
He's one of those classic examples of a guy who didn't want his powers, didn't really know what to do with them, kind of gave in to his more baser impulses, and then, realized like, hey, I'm not a bad, when they started, I think they were talking about like Broadway musicals. They're talking about Wicked.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, he quotes Wicked, and she's like, oh, wait a second. And then there's the common ground for them to talk about. And Hetty Wolf, she has, a brief couple appearances through here. We understand that
she shows up a lot after this.
Does she? Okay, yeah. That's the thread that I kind of figured they were going to weave later on throughout the series, is her, involvement of putting those books out there. Patsy does not like that. Evan, I mean, would you feel the same way if your mom posted a bunch of comic books about your childhood and teenage years?
Oh man, if my mom was making comic books, I'd be like, hook me up with a job. Yeah, no, I can understand that, and you get an idea from some of the elements that they used in Jessica Jones, former star, now with another life, and the domineering stage mom. So you see how they adapted those elements to the Netflix world.
Yep.
So yeah, it's it's a neat way to incorporate everything that Marvel has been over the years. Instead of, it looked like they were going that way with Secret Wars, but instead of DC, and there's a lot of good DC comics, but instead of DC kind of hitting the reset button every couple of years, Marvel just takes it all in. It seems like, they had a comic years ago called Night Nurse that was, about a nurse who worked at night, and then she becomes the off the books hospital and healthcare provider for superheroes later in New Avengers. So it's neat to see how they kind of take those things and make them work, have those nods to the past, and put them all in the same universe.
One of the things I remember reading, or when I was watching that video today, they were talking about how all these comics that had been written, the romance comics back in the 40s, 50s, whatever, through the 60s, that was like it was a weird meta way of using that because it was Timely Comics and it became Marvel Comics, and Marvel's like, oh yeah, this all happened, but it was actually Patsy Walker's mom who was publishing these comics. So the comics are all like part of Marvel continuity in some strange fashion. A very interesting and weird, twisted way that just like you said, Marvel does things.
So let's talk about Hetty for a moment.
Okay.
Hetty will go on to have a relationship with Belial.
Oh boy.
Yeah, they
now this
devil, you say.
That's a good one.
Okay, so Hetty will end up eventually convincing Damien Hellstrom, who apparently is a dope, and Sheepdog, who is also a dope. Hellcat is somehow like betraying them or going to attack them in some way, or has the cure for Sheepdog, which she won't give him. And so they both go after her while they're singing karaoke, like you do, like white people do. So she goes and confronts them, and Damien Hellstrom sends her to hell. And like while she's she's down there, Belial, keeps like trying to torment her, and she's like, this isn't gonna work. I know what you are. And I think she eventually convinces Belial that this is all. I think between her and her friends, they all convince Damien Hellstrom that he's being manipulated. So I think he ends up sending Hetty to hell. Hellcat comes back. He sends Hetty to hell, and Hetty and Belial end up finding common ground and having a relationship.
Oh boy!
It works out because after everything that happens to Hellcat, she catches an interdimensional flu and sneezes and warps reality. They figured out that this is her body breaking down from stress, and so she ends up having like a therapy session with Belial.
Oh, jeez.
It's perfect.
Yeah, I'm kind of reading.
But the best part of that was Damien Hellstrom going, I may have some anger management problems.
There's tons of great lines in the whole series.
Yeah, there is.
At least the 6 issues that I was reading. I haven't read the others, but the more Mark talks about it, the more I kind of want to go back and track them down. I like some of the the meta jokes, like in issue 2, she finds the teens that recognize her from the comic, and she goes, "Since when are kids reading comics again?"
Yeah.
That was also the issue where they used parkour as a sound effect, which I thought was great.
Oh, nice.
Like, no fair, we can't do flips like that.
Did you like Arcade showing up here, Evan?
Yeah. I've always enjoyed Arcade, and they did make a reference that this was post Avengers Arena, where Arcade was like, yeah, so I ripped off the plot of Hunger Games and kidnapped a bunch of teenage superheroes.
That's a good book, by the way.
Yeah,
I actually enjoyed that one.
Yeah, my only issue with it was basically Hunger Games, and I think in the first issue, Arcade's like, yeah, so this is Hunger Games, people like it, so I thought I'm like, okay.
Yeah, they even referenced the book or something, if I remember right.
You acknowledged it. You've taken down my objection to the series. There was a line in there where there was a caption that said they were talking about Arcade, and it said maybe too evil for our comic, and I have in my notes, well, yeah, after Avengers Arena, there were just lots of great dialogue moments, like where Casiolena had them all trapped, and she said, "How does it feel to watch the city you protect come to ruin?" And Valkyrie's like, "No, personally, I've sworn to oversee many realms. It's not just New York." But and I looked up Kate Leth because I wasn't familiar with her, and the other thing I found for her on Hoopla is that she wrote a lot of Adventure Time comics.
Oh, okay.
Now I never got into the show Adventure Time, but I'm curious about the comics because you know who else came from Adventure Time before writing for Marvel? Ryan North, the writer of, you guessed it, The Unbeatable Squirrel Girl.
Squirrel Girl. The other thing that I remember was that I really thought was hilarious was Casiolena sending Papo in that energy cage and telling him to do something. And like he gets in there, you could tell he's going to do nothing. He has no power over the people that are inside there. And sure enough, when he walks in there, they just pretty much tie him up. They're like, okay, this isn't.
I love what he says. He's just like, because you've got anger management issues, I end up being kicked out of the realm. Like, I didn't do anything wrong.
Yep. Well. All right. Well, we had a good time here. I mean, any other burning desires, talking points there, Mark Radulich?
No, it was like I said, it was a very light read. I just think back to some of the stuff we've read earlier this year where one issue would just hurt in the eyes and they would pass out and years would go by. I woke up and I had grandchildren after reading the Kree-Skrull War. And this one, in 2 days, like I just breezed through 17 issues, and I was like, I would read 17 more of these. This was great. And like, I get there's a population of comic book readers where that's they just want like male-driven boy fantasy, gruesome death and blood everywhere kind of comics, but and consider stuff like this to be like the reason why comic books don't sell anymore. That's the argument. It's like, okay, I get that, but A, it's not true, and B, there's an audience for this. It's not just girls. It's not just young girls. I mean, I don't think we're the audience for it, but I guess we are because we enjoyed it. So
yeah, if you had a good time reading it, there's no sense in saying, well, this isn't for me.
Right.
I mean,
nothing wrong with comics being fun. DC Rebirth, #1, where they reveal the Watchmen connection, and the implication, the meta implication is, you know what ruined comics and made them depressing? Watchmen. But there's nothing wrong with dark grim and gritty storytelling if it's done well. What, to me, ruined comics, which is why I loved the theory that the guy pulling the strings was Superboy Prime and framing Dr. Manhattan, was the comics that tried to be Watchmen and failed, that missed the point. The storytelling of Watchmen was just like, hey, naked dude and lots of people getting killed and blood everywhere. That's what made Watchmen great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm sure Alan Moore, like his nightmare is like he goes to bed and he has dreams of people interpretation of the Watchmen, and it's completely off the point, and he wakes up screaming, drenched in sweat.
I would shudder to think what an Alan Moore nightmare is actually like.
It would probably look a lot like Patsy Walker AKA Hellcat.
You know what?
And seriously, Alan Moore, I mean, he's not everything he did was, crazy weird. I mean, he wrote Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, which is not the story I was trying to reference. It was For the Man Who Has Everything.
Well, that sounds familiar.
He wrote two of my personal favorite Green Lantern stories. Not that I'm a huge into Green Lantern, but he wrote
what you're going.
Mogo Doesn't Socialize.
Yep, it's a great one.
Which was awesome. And then lesser known, but even better in my mind, was the F Sharp Bell.
I don't know that one.
They were trying to find a Green Lantern, someone to make a Green Lantern among an alien race that lived in complete darkness, so they had no concept of color or light. So how do you tell them what a Green Lantern is?
That's brilliant.
And it was like an 8-page story. It was fantastic. So yeah, even Alan Moore, could just do cool comics that were fun.
I think there's room in this world for Baby Darkseid and Civil War 2 and the Skrull War. But I think if you don't make room for the Squirrel Girls and the Hellcats, you are going to lose a part of your own, because not everyone wants to watch The Wire every day. I get it. It's the best show in the history of television, but it's also fucking depressing. My wife watched like a few episodes of the last season, and the season finale brought her to tears, and she asked me why I was making her watch this.
Oh, gee.
And she married me anyway.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's something to be said for just having fun. I mean, Breaking Bad, great TV show. I hated everybody on it by the third episode, and I was yelling at them for most of the show.
I was going to say, like, not everybody wants to watch The Wire every day, so there's The Big Bang Theory.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's room in this world for both. So, don't scream and yell that the stuff like this exists.
Let me take it just one tiny step further and piggyback off of this, because we kind of talked about Patsy Walker's history prior to this, and she was a romance character. Then she, things got a little serious there when she became a hero, and then towards the 90s when she was talked into suicide, and then we have something like this. Would you say, I'll start with you, Evan, I mean, are there any characters that you would say are off limits to this type of art and storytelling? Or would you say that any character, no matter how dark the history, could have a lighthearted story told?
The toughest one that I can think of mainstream would be The Punisher, and yet we had Archie meets the Punisher.
Did we ever?
Wolverine. Everybody was so in love with, Logan, it's hard R, and that's how Wolverine should be. Well, to them I say Wolverine First Class. Fred Van Lente and then Peter David did an all-ages Wolverine comic about him mentoring Kitty Pryde. And I read an interview with Peter David, and they're like, well, how are you going to do a Wolverine comic where he can't stab a bunch of people? And he said, if you can't write a Wolverine comic where he's not killing people, you're not a very good writer.
Yeah.
I mean, Wolverine First Class was tons of fun. I went back and read some of the trades that Fred Van Lente did. I got interested in it because of Peter David, but I mean, it was just like, Kitty Pryde's a big fan of Dazzler, so she wants Logan to introduce her, and she thinks Thor is hot. So again, hey Logan, can you introduce me to Thor? And they even during Secret Invasion, they had a little Secret Invasion prequel where Kitty and Logan got abducted by Skrulls researching Earth's superheroes to duplicate their powers, and got saved by Captain Marvel. And it was just all one and two issue stories, and it was just fun. It was appropriate for all ages, and you had a few laughs.
I want to read you something, Jesse.
Okay.
Arnold Schwarzenegger's filmography from the 80s. Conan the Barbarian, Conan the Destroyer, Terminator, Red Sonja, Commando, Raw Deal, Predator, The Running Man, Red Heat. What do all those things have? That's 82 through 88.
Yep.
What do all those things have in common?
Sound like all action movies.
You know what his next movie was in 88?
Is it going to be twins?
Yup. Then he does Total Recall. Want to know what follow? You want to know what the follow-up to Total Recall was?
True Law? No, hold on. That's later. Total Recall was 89?
90.
90. I'm at a loss.
Kindergarten Cop.
Oh gosh, how could I forget?
Okay, I just need to say that if they ever make a Submariner movie, I want Schwarzenegger to play one of his advisors, and they're going to be trying to figure out who is causing all these problems. And one of the advisors is going to be pretty sure that it's that darn warlord Atuma, and Schwarzenegger will say, "It's not Atuma."
It's not Atuma.
Okay. Sorry, Mark. Go ahead. Continue your point.
This is why we don't get invited out much.
Nope.
I'm in my basement. This is why my wife doesn't mind when I go down to the basement, because I'm telling these jokes upstairs otherwise.
I bring up Schwarzenegger because he's really the classic example of somebody who, for almost a decade, was pigeonholed into these like action movies. And granted, these action movies also made millions of dollars. So, they kept doing them. And he took a chance with Twins. He took a chance starring opposite Danny DeVito in what was basically a comedy. Mm-hmm. And then 2 years later, he makes Kindergarten Cop, which is still an action movie, but it's basically like Arnold Schwarzenegger playing opposite a room full of snotty kids and doing a lot of comedy.
Yep.
Now, the movie, it works because the movie has heart and everything else. And so it's, to your point, Jesse, about is there an example of somebody who you can take out of like their ultra violent role and place them in a comedic situation? Arnold Schwarzenegger. He went from Commando to Kindergarten Cop in less than a decade. Mm-hmm. So I think it's all about the writing. If you look at Spider-Man was pretty melodramatic for a long time. And then you have Spider-Ham. It can get weirder.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, hey, real quick before we get into plugs, I did talk to Cole Marentet. Actually, Mark, you were talking to him because he saw that Cole Marentet had seen where you had read all 3 volumes of this series, 3 or 4. How many volumes was it? 3 or 4? 3. So, and Cole Marentet, previous guest on the show, you can check out, I always tease him, you can check out our RoboCop versus Terminator discussion where he came on begrudgingly and talked that with me and Ronnie Adams. But I asked him if I could.
That's available on Hoopla.
That's right, it is. I saw it on there. I was like, oh man, I don't want to revisit that. He says he did really enjoy the series. Some of the art was not so great, but as far as the story goes, I had a good time from the first issue to the last. So that's a pretty good review by one Cole Marentet there. So I guess that will bring our discussion to a close here. Do you have anything else there, Evan Bevins, before we move on to plugs?
I just wanted to talk a little about Squirrel Girl. No, I mean, it is neat that you can have this book that works as comedy and still not gloss over Patsy's mystical past and things like that. I mean, she's a character that I think with that and the mystical angle has proven she could work in just about any series. I mean, I could easily see them putting her in the next iteration of Marvel Zombies or something like that. Which is dark comedy, I guess, but
that's happening sometime soon, isn't it?
Yeah, it's coming out this fall. CNN caught some flack because they ran a headline online that said, "On the same day they cancel Walking Dead, Marvel announces new Marvel Zombies."
Bit of an issue there, considering that's not Marvel. Walking Dead is not Marvel.
But it's just it's neat, and like I said, I always had a soft spot for Patsy because of the Defenders connection and the just the fact that she was this meta character before everything became meta commentary on comics and things like that. And but reading this and then going back and reading the Catherine Eminem stuff, reminded me what a fun character she is, and it'd be neat to see somebody do something else with her.
Here we go. Let's head into plugs there. This will bring our discussion of Patsy Walker, A.K.A. Hellcat. Hooked on a feline.
Ba-ba-da-ba. I'm high on believing that Jesse's in love with me.
All right, let's get into plugs. Evan Bevins, like I said, hot off of the River City comic Arts Festival. Did I get
Evan
that right?
Bevins is like a cat on a hot tin roof, baby.
Ooh,
Woo!
woo. I think we made less cat references than Squirrel Girl references tonight. But Evan Bevins, tell us all about what you are doing. What would you like to promote, sir?
Well, I was at the River City Comic Arts Festival since I was healthy and didn't have a case of cat scratch fever. I was there promoting the comic, webcomic that I write and Nathan Arnold draws, a support group about a support group for people with lame superpowers. We have 3 issues in print. We are now on Webtoons, and when my computer died, I got out of the habit of posting, but I gave out so many flyers, and now I've mentioned it on this podcast, so thousands upon thousands of people will be going to Webtoons to look for support group. So we're going to get a regular posting again, and issue 4 is chugging toward completion.
Spectacular.
So you get to see Wonder Wolf in space.
Oh,
and if you don't know who Wonder Wolf is, then you should check out a support group. And if you want to see an actual fictional narwhal as opposed to the very real animal, check out issue 2.
You got any articles coming up for Graffiti?
Oh yeah, the Mount Rushmore of comic book movie casting. Which in my estimation is the greatest casting moves ever. Actually, you should read Graffiti and check it out. But I can tell you, much to the dismay of my editor, Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool did not make the list.
Oh, boy.
And also check out on newsandsentinel.com for the Parkersburg News and Sentinel. I provide the backstories of the comics on which a lot of movie and TV shows are based. I think my next one to go along with Endgame coming out will be all the different versions of the Hulk we've seen. Most people think he's a green guy that, says Hulk smash, but they don't know the glory that is the Gray Hulk or Professor Hulk.
Joe Fix-It.
Yep, Mr.
Joe Fix-It. Yes, the first comic I regularly collected.
That's
Peter David's like, hey, remember that printing error that no one talks about? Let's make it.
Yeah.
Actually, I can't give Peter David credit. Somebody else changed it back to grade. Peter David just ran with it for 10 years.
All right, Mark Radlich, hit us with the schedule, man.
Tomorrow in DMU Hollywood, it's just myself and Robert Winfrey. We're going to be reviewing Hobbs and Shaw. Jesse and I will be reviewing Volbeat, Rewind, Replay, Reboot, Restart. It's also day plus 30, Jesse. You know what that means? So when I got my RT infusion, that was day 0. So the day after day plus 30, like the day 30 is the last day of my my doctor imposed house arrest. Part 1. Yeah. So starting August 8th, I could actually be alone. I can be left alone by myself like an adult.
No hallucinations. You're doing good.
Yep. I can also move back into my house.
That's always a plus.
In any case, yeah, I can go back home this next weekend coming up, and then it's just a short 3-4 week wait until my 8 weeks is up, and then I can start driving and go back to work again.
Oh, wow. That's spectacular, dude. Spectacular.
Yeah, so
day plus 30. All right.
Exciting horse. Thank you. Speaking of day plus 30 and self-imposed jail, Orange is the New Black, season 7, the season that made me cry a lot.
Oh, my.
Take a break on Friday so I can then binge watch Glow season 3.
That shouldn't take very long. That'll be quick.
That'll be just a couple hours.
Yeah.
And then me and myself and Pat will be doing boxing commentary for Frampton Comes Alive versus Emmanuel Dominguez on ESPN Plus in Philadelphia. So go ahead and check out me and Pat calling some boxing. SummerSlam is August 11th. We're going to talk about it on August 13th. In the meantime, in between time, Jesse and I are going to do a split 7-inch.
Oh, yeah.
You know what a split 7-inch is, right, Jesse?
As a matter of fact, I do.
Evan Bevins, do you know what a split 7-inch is?
I do not.
Split 7-inch is 2 different bands who recorded a single on a 7-inch vinyl record. So like side A might be Face to Face and side B might be No Use for a Name. Anyway, when my kids go back to school, Jesse and I are gonna take you to school in the kitchen. None of that made any sense. We're gonna be doing a combined source material / Damn You Hollywood. We're gonna do like we did a few years ago with Alan Moore Month, where we did one show comparing the book to the movie. Well, instead of doing a whole month of that, we're just gonna do one show, and it's The Kitchen, which is a DC comic book that got made into a movie.
I just downloaded it on Hoopla.
Well, you're more than welcome to join us.
For a split 7-inch
Yeah,
live.
buddy.
August 12th.
I don't know that I'm going to make it to the movie.
I understand.
So,
Starring Melissa
I
McCarthy.
appreciate it.
And because Robert Winfrey is allergic to Melissa McCarthy, him, Alexis, and Jason Teasley will be doing DMU Hollywood at its regularly scheduled time of Tuesday at 9, August 13th, and they're going to do scary stories to tell in the dark in the basement behind the door that says "Beware of the Leopard." One of our new podcast pals, Mr. TMC, will be stepping out of the wrestling podcast to do. Oh, I mentioned we're going to be doing it. Well, they're doing DMU Hollywood on August 13th. We'll be doing a SummerSlam review for a TV party tonight. It'll be myself and the four podsmen, TMC, CB3, Chris Sheehan, and the disapproving dad, Chief Bastard himself, Mr. Kipo, to you, Jesse Starcher, SummerSlam,
right.
August 13th. And then TMC is going to make a double shot. He's going to join us on the Metal Hammer of Doom for the new Slipknot. We Are Not Your Kind, baby dolls.
That's right.
And then Sean Comer makes his third appearance in a row in the month of August. I got him on lockdown every Thursday in the month of August, baby dolls. We're going to be doing Glow Season 3, speaking of Genji Cohen. How do you like them apples?
Hey, if I get it done, I might join you guys.
All right.
What do you think of that?
Sean Garmer is going to be there, so I'm going to be surrounded by Sean's.
Sean Garmer's going to be there?
Yeah, Sean Garmer, Sean Comer. I'm going to be the white filling in a Sean Oreo. Speaking of making Jesse feel uncomfortable, well, Jesse and I will be contributing to the Superblog team up under the subject of Immortal by watching and commenting as we watch the hit science fiction movies for girls. They've claimed it as their own. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to watch Jupiter Ascending.
Yep.
Let that sink in. Robert Winfrey got jealous of me and Pat and decided he wanted to start doing watch-alongs too, but he signed up to do UFC coverage for the rest of his life every Saturday. So we're going to try and do a watch-along to the main card of Cormier versus Miocic, UFC 241. We'll see how that turns out. We got Swamp Thing week all week long. We got the Alan Moore saga of the Swamp Thing, which airs August 19th. Jesse and I will be doing a TV party for the DC Universe canceled series now, Swamp Thing. Jesse Starcher and I will be reviewing The Art is Moira. It's Moira, Jesse. Human Target. Sean and I, 4 weeks in a row, will be doing an on trial for Swamp Thing, the 1982 movie starring Adrian Barbeau getting stabbed in the boobie.
Directed by Wes Craven.
That's
Directed
right.
by Wes Craven, that's right.
That's right.
And just penciled in, we shoved it in there, nice and tight.
Mm-hmm.
Myself, Al Sedano, and fucking Jesse Starcher.
This is like the August of Jesse's discontent here. So many podcasts.
We're gonna watch. We're gonna do a TV party for Good Omens.
We got, and then man, it's gonna be a blast. I know Good Omens. I've got the episode 3, and I've had a good time so far. So that'll be a fun discussion.
And then finally, we end August with a bevy of beautiful podcasts. Just something for everybody. We've got the Screaming Boy podcast. We dug Ronnie Adams out of hiding. We pulled his head out of the oven after GC Hanna-Barbera 3. He's going to talk to me and Alexis Hana of Honeysuckle Rose Creations about D23, which will have been on August 24th. Jesse and I are going to talk about DC First, Superman Lobo. And speaking of Superman and Lobo, we're going to have a TV party for Krypton Season 2.
That's right.
We end the August Metal Hammer of Dooms with Rage of Light Imploder. Jesse, remember that Candyman video I showed you? That's the band, baby. On Thursday, the 29th, you're going to get a middle of the day show from Alexis Hana and I, because I will not have yet returned to work like a normal person. We'll be doing a TV party tonight for the Banana Splits movie that's airing on the Sci-Fi Network on August 27th. It looks like Five Nights at Freddy, but it's La La La, the Banana Splits. August 31st, myself and Pat Mullen will be doing a TV party tonight review for NXT UK TakeOver Cardiff. That'll air right before AEW All Out. All the way out, Jesse.
As Winfrey said, they went from all the way in to all the way out pretty quickly.
No, repeatedly. I'm done talking now.
Mark Radulich is done talking. I have one thing I want to quickly plug, and then we'll throw.
Oh my God!
Oh, don't even.
You mean you have time to do something other than all the stuff Mark just listed?
Somehow, some way,
Jesse signed a contract with me that pretty much obligates him to anything I ask him to do.
Oh,
man,
nice.
bet that didn't age well.
My soul. So, So yeah, me and Chris Armstrong and I, however you want to put that there, we have come together and released our 0 issue.
Right now?
No, not right now. not while I have you guys on the podcast. I have me and Chris put together our 0 issue release for our Unspoken Decade related podcast. It's called Unspoken Issues. So that is out on the network. That just got released on Sunday, the 28th of July. And hopefully shortly after this podcast airs, you will catch our first episode of Unspoken Issues, which will be based on the first issue of Prototype. That was the clear winner. We put Prototype, I think. Prototype went up against Thunderstrike. I'm very sorry, Evan Bevins. Thunderstrike did not win. And
that's okay. One of these days I'm going to read the whole series and I'll record it and send it to you and pretend that you'll turn it into a podcast.
I could do that. I could do it. So yeah, we're going to be doing that. And then shortly after that will be our discussion on Magnus Robot Fighter #1 from Valiant Comics. So check out the UnspokenDecade.com. We have to get, check that out there. We're going to have the podcast up there on that. We'll have it on the Facebook site for Unspoken Decade and, of course, the Radulich and Broadcasting Network for being so gracious to carry it and allow it to be streamed to everybody's ear holes. So, all right, I'm ready to get out of here. For Evan Bevins, thank you for coming on here and discussing with us Patsy Walker Hellcat and Mark Radulich, the Patriarch, who was sleepy 5,000 plugs ago. I'd hate to think what he is now. We're out of here.
As a rock.
That's great. Ladies and gentlemen, have a good one. Bye-bye.
Squirrel Girl.
Thank you all for joining us. Make sure to give that Radulich in Broadcasting Facebook page a like to stay up on top of all the great podcasts we have to offer. We are at home on Spreaker, but you can also find us on iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, and recently we have hit the air on Spotify. Find your favorite podcast platform and type in RADULICH to subscribe for some great content. If you enjoyed this show, please feel free to share and spread the word. And as always, we appreciate any feedback and look forward to entertaining you again soon.
And then I can't hear nothing.
I understood some of those words.
You hurry up.
Shut up.
Hurry up.
Shut up, Mark. Oh, no, ladies and gentlemen, that is not Elvis Presley. What was that?
It wasn't Elvis, pal.
The Guardians of the Galaxy.
I screwed up this intro. All pieces.
Joey Ryan's Penis Party.
Whoa!
I didn't mind wave.
Yes.
Is that Elvis?
And it definitely has a lot of tone in common with Squirrel Girl, which I may have mentioned before.
This is when I think of bad art, first I think of Sam Keith.
Patsy Walker AKA Hellcat. Let's say that again. Horrible. I can't apologize.
Wow, you're going to edit this part out where I don't know what the heck I just did, right?
Oh, are we going to go?
Jonah Jameson as J.K. Rowling. Wait.
J.K. Rowling!
Yes, it's not a myth. It happened.
The internet remembers.
The internet does remember. Patron remembers. Sometimes I like to open up my jacket and let Josie come inside.
No.
And finally, August 31st. I ain't fucking done. Calm the fuck down. How about that?
Source material bonus content.
Can we please get a 10-hour-long discussion of Doc Green running around depowering Hulks?
Sure.
All right, Mark Radulich, hit us with.
I do have a cool anecdote about that, but I know you need to go, Mark.
No. Go ahead.
Well, I was at a Mid-Ohio-Con in Columbus back before Wizard took it over and made it big and unwieldy and expensive. And there was a Hulk panel with Peter David, Paul Jenkins, and Sean McKeever. Peter David, of course, introduced Doc Green as the synthesis of the Hulk's dominant personalities. Paul Jenkins, another of my favorite writers, came along and said Doc Green was just another person personality that Doc Samson drew out to take control because the Hulk was breaking down, so he just drew out this other personality to take control of everything. And I asked him, I basically asked Peter David what he thought of Paul Jenkins kind of undoing his story, and he's like, I wasn't a fan.
Oh, jeez.
I mean, he wasn't rude about it, but
I have to say, I love the Doc Green run as the Hulk because it was such a simple story. Like, it's something we should do in source material one day. Just that entire run where basically in the previous iteration of the Hulk, I think it was, somebody shot Banner and made him a retard, gave him the brain damage. And then Iron Man fixed it with Extremis because of his guilt over, I guess, having caused the Gamma explosion in Original Sin. So...
Oh, this was a newer version. This wasn't the Doc Green I was familiar with. Okay, my bad.
Yeah. I'm not talking about the Professor. This is like right before Secret Wars.
Okay.
So
all right. This is right after Mark Waid's run.
Yeah. So there's this whole iteration of the Hulk where he's a genius, but he's like an evil genius, and he kind of does the math, and he's like, yeah, we can't have all these Hulks running around. They'll destroy the universe. So he develops a cure, and he gets Rick Jones, I think, first, and then he goes after after Scar. He goes after basically all these different all the Hulks that ended up in the Hulks comic book. There's a couple of issues where he's running down the Red Hulk, and eventually he gets to him. He depowers Betty, I think, at one point. The only one he leaves standing is She-Hulk, and he's kind of like, you're the best of us. And then, oh, by the way, we need at least one Hulk in the universe, and I'm dying. Then Secret Wars happened, then Civil War 2, and he was shot with an arrow.
Man.
Yeah.
Have you been reading Immortal Hulk?
I read the first trade. I don't get it.
I've heard a lot of people say that it's really good.
It gets really messed up in the second trade.
I'll have to give it a shot. But yeah, the first trade, I was like, whatever.
I haven't read any of it, but I've heard a lot of people say it's great. So, I mean, like some of the better stuff that's out there. So to hear you guys say
it's not quite my cup of tea. I mean, Al Ewing that writes it, I love a lot of his stuff.
There's a horror
it's
aesthetic.
It's not bad. It's just not to my taste.
Okay.
From what I understand, there's like a horror aesthetic.
Oh, yes.
And it's not, again, I'm kind of with you. It's like, oh, this is really not what I want to. No, the run on the Incredible Hulk run that I love is the one where Banner and Hulk are separated, and the Hulk is turned into like the Banner is turned into like Dr. Moreau. He's like experimenting on animals, trying to recreate himself as the Hulk. And the Hulk's just out there hunting elk, hunting shark. Like, yay, I get to be alone. No one's bothering me. And it's like, what does a Hulk do? I've told you about this before, Jesse. What does a Hulk do in the world? He just hangs out. He's just chilling.
Yeah, just living the life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that there's all these stories about Banner trying desperately not to be the Hulk, and then as soon as he's not the Hulk, he has to get it back.
Yeah.
I mean, there's one of the old like 60s or 70s stories where Doc Samson cures him of being the Hulk, and he gets jealous because Doc Samson's the big hero and Betty thinks he's handsome, and he just flat turns himself back into the Hulk. So like every time I read like, oh, it's this curse I can't escape from, I'm like, well, you did that one time.
Now, eventually, him and the Hulk are rejoined, but it's the opposite effect where basically he has to stay angry in order to be the Hulk. Because if he turns back into Banner ends up doing all these crazy things, and the Hulk wakes up in like shitty situations.
Oh man, wait, when was that? I haven't read that one, but
I'll have to look for it. For a while there, like I was reading everything with the word Hulk on it, so I read a whole bunch of different like runs on the Hulk.
Nice.
But that one was the like a 15 or 16 issue limited Incredible Hulk series, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
I'll when we're done with this, I'll quickly look up the storyline, Stay Angry, and I'll send you the deets, as the kids say.
All right.